Testing. No? It's not. It doesn't sound like it's on. It's on.
Mm-hmm.
Try that.
Test. No.
So. Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. Everyone can take their seat quickly, please. We'll get going then here. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 2024 Neighborhood Partnership Meeting. My name is Lieutenant Trevor Pazdera. I just took over for Community Services at the West Allis Police Department. I want to take a minute to thank Mayor Devine, all the different alderman persons here, and I know that Judge Murphy, we saw earlier, is here also. And we also like to thank the Facebook community for being with us today. Okay, so tonight we'll be hearing from two different people, or two different presentations. The first one will be from Dave Webking from DPW, and Dave will be talking about snow and ice removal throughout the city. And after that, we'll hear from Deputy Chief Robert Fletcher and Captain Todd Clemente, who will be speaking about crime statistics and trends from October 1st, 2023 through December 31st of 2023. Dave?
Well, thank you. I appreciate the invite. Tonight we'll be talking about the snow operations that the city performs each and every storm. So each storm is different, so we'll kind of go through a quick slide presentation. So what's our goal for Public Works? What are we trying to do? Obviously, the safe passage for traffic throughout the city. We have main thoroughfares as well as residential streets, either by brining, salting, and or plowing. So what are our responsibilities for the Department of Public Works? We have a variety of responsibilities. We have main thoroughfares that are identified in the RMC where it's 45 central lane miles that we have to take care of. So of those main thoroughfares, there's 33 streets that are identified as mains, and we have consolidated them into 15 groupings so they can be addressed efficiently. Residential areas is 31 other sections that we have to address. That accounts for 140 lane miles. Allis, unlike Milwaukee, City of Milwaukee, we do plow and we do salt. We try to address the alleys within the city of West Allis. That accounts for 44 miles. Dead ends, cul-de-sacs, sidewalks, safety islands, that's all part someone has to address. And I ask for patience. We try to get to all these areas as soon as we can, promise. So the main thoroughfares is the primary that we want to consider and we want to address. So given a storm, we may have a person on watch, which I'll cover later. That watch person will call and notify people and staff members, and we will call in 5 drivers. That's our simple response. And then it would be increased to 10, 15, to 20. Always consider as you take those employees, those staff members to address the main thoroughfares, that leaves you less options for a full plow operation. Because why? They're working longer durations, so therefore you got to have a cycle. Types of weather considerations is the types of storms. So it could be flooding, rain, could be sleet, ice, snow. As we've seen in this past snowstorm, we've seen heavy moisture type snow, and then we've seen the drop in freezing temperatures. Now today, we have an issue of storm sewers being exposed. We want to allow the flooding, the draining. It's just been kind of a weird winter so far, but I'll take it. Other factors that we consider is the start and end of the precipitation of the storm. So when it starts, it's different than regular during the evening with nobody, less traffic to the rush hour. What if it starts at 7 a.m. and we get a heavy amount of snow? Then the decision process is, do we continue certain services, garbage, recycling? Because we need those staff members as well as equipment to address the streets at that time. So it's just kind of how we kind of do the decision process with the other management team members. That's a good question. That's always an option, but it's hard to get them at your location at the time that you're going to plow or salt, and then having them come back and address any type of errors or mistakes, but good point. Yes?
If I may add to Karen, we tried that a few years ago with our retired employees to come back and plow on their off time to kind of.
Correct.
They didn't even want to do it.
Yeah, we had that program where we did have a few retired employees that expressed interest, but trying to maintain that. And again, you got to have the storms, the amount of occurrences to make it beneficial for them as well. But duration of the event, that's always a key. Shorter the better. Less snow is good, but when you have a longer duration storm, that means you have to look at various shifts, and you cannot hit or treat throughout the city. So that means less people are there or available or fresh to do the plowing and salting. So We get all our information from the National Weather Service. They're great to deal with. They do have periodic meetings throughout the week if there's a large storm. So we kind of get the initial intel of a storm and if it's going to change. Okay. So the pieces of equipment that we use, ideally, to have a dump truck, single axle or a tandem, to be able to have a salt spreader on that vehicle, so as you plow, you can spread as you go. So every now and then, we do get calls that, hey, you're down my street and you did not salt. There's various reasons for that. It could be because it was a refuse packer and they don't have the salting capabilities. It could have been salting during a snowstorm is just not efficient, so we usually wait towards the end of a snowstorm to conserve the salt, but given the location and the intersections, we do address. Pickup trucks, we use any and everything that can put a plow blade on a vehicle, and if they have a all-wheel drive. Garbage and recycling packers, if they're not picking up refuse or recycling, they are used for plowing. And we have a very good past employee here, Marty Welskoff, who is very dependable, efficient, but he was one that had a refuse packer as well. The turning radius is not sufficient. They are slower. They do get stuck easily. So they're just kind of harder to operate, especially around parked cars, that sort of thing. Front end loaders is ideal because you have more site clearance. You are way higher than all the other vehicles. You can turn around and see what's behind you, side of you, what's in front. The turning radius is quicker, a quick turning. So when you have a radius that you have to clear off, it can get to those areas quicker and better. New last year, and I thank you all for this, is we purchased 3 Bobcats. They're kind of like 4-wheel, all-terrain vehicles. These are improvement. They're more reliable, more efficient. They're faster. They get to and from, so they address all the sidewalks, safety islands, in some cases, fire hydrants with their loader attachment throughout the city. And then we have the 200 series dump truck, which is between a single axle tandem and a pickup. So when the storm approaches, we do monitor the weather and we try to prep accordingly. The reason I put that on there, if the forecast is not accurate or if it changes, we try to change with it. We always verify the available equipment and staff available. You have vacations, you have individuals that are not present. You have people that have worked several shifts prior to that you have to consider. We have a watch person. So in the winter months, for 1 week, we do have a winter watch person who is responsible for watching the weather and any type of emergencies that would occur during off work hours. So they have a phone, and if they get a call from the West Allis Police Department, Fire Department, or a resident that there's an urgency, they are the one that's responding and calling in the necessary personnel and equipment to rectify that solution. So the factors that we kind of reviewed was, what is the temperature before? What is the temperature during and after? So if you have 32-degree temperature beginning of the storm and it slightly is decreasing, that means the snow that's on the streets, main thoroughfares, alleys, residential streets, is tending to freeze. So you may have less than 3 inches of snow, but we will plan on doing a full plow operation to get all that snow accumulation off those roads and side streets. So therefore it doesn't freeze. The speed of the storm is consideration. Lake enhancement. You may get a forecast from 3 to 5 inches, and over the years I've seen where it has increased to 7 to 8 or 9 inches, or the other way, 7 or 9 inches, and the lake enhancement brings in the warmer weather and lowers the accumulation amount for us. So whatever we are planning and coordinating, we are trying to get this out on social media through the city's communications department to kind of give you an idea of what's being planned. So the use of salt and brine, it does help eliminate the bonding of the snow and ice onto the roadway surface, asphalt or concrete. That bonding is so hard, and we've just seen it in certain areas of the city where it was built up, and we were trying to salt it because the increased temperatures, salt works 20 degrees Fahrenheit or more, and we even used scrapers. We could not break that bond so the ice would be removed. Salt and brine, they're an activator, so they do melt the snow at temperatures over 20. But also if you put brine onto salt when you are spreading, it wets the salt and therefore decreases the wasted salt when you're applying on a street or roadway. Less bounce, that sort of thing going to the curb. Brine also, if we just put and apply brine on the road surface, we got to have good favorable conditions. We can't have rain, we can't have a lot of high moisture, we can have certain temperatures that is favorable for that. When it is applied, it can be applied up to 48 hours prior to a storm. It can address up to 1 inch of snow. And again, when you use brine, it is more environmentally favorable by not using salt. When you do use salt, there was a time where you could have a good amount of snow accumulation on the streets. Could be main thoroughfares, residential, or the alleys. You increase the efficiency of the salt when you plow first and you remove the snow accumulation and you apply the salt. The salt doesn't have to go through all that snow accumulation or ice. So it's better, and you will see through storms that when we have 1 inch or 2 inches, we direct staff to have and apply this plow blade on the driving lanes to clear that snow debris, so therefore the salt is activated quicker and more efficiently. Now, the third point is when you can't get to certain areas of the city, and again, it's based on traffic compaction, it's pretty hard to address that. Once it's compacted with road traffic, it's hard to get, especially with the freezing temperatures that are decreasing. But that's our goal. So as a reminder, dump trucks, single, tandem, axle dump trucks, we have approximately 20 of those dump trucks. They can plow more efficient, but also they can address by using spreading of salt and calcium chloride or brine along with that material. So full plow operation, that occurs 5 to 8 times per year. Hopefully only once this year, it'd be great. So when we do that, it's kind of like all hands on deck. We have about 110 staffing employees. Of that, a majority of them are assigned to a piece of equipment and some type of route, whether it be a main, a residential, dead-end route, cul-de-sac, safety islands, sidewalks, what have you. When we're doing that, usually a full plow operation is after the storm or nearing the end of a storm. So I ask for patience that during a storm, we do not want to exhaust all our labor while the storm is still occurring. Our primary objective is keeping the main thoroughfares available for emergency and traffic to go from point A to point B. And as I mentioned here on a couple of slides that will be coming up, is intermittently we do have those vehicles who are addressing the main thoroughfares. They will be directed to go and address the residential sections, the driving lanes. So as the accumulation is going up, up, up in the residential sections, we want the patrons to be able to get out onto the main thoroughfares. So 4 or 5 inches, we will do the driving lanes. So we will get calls saying, hey, you DPW, you went through the residential sections, you didn't clear entirely the street. One of the reasons could be, not all the time, we could be in error, is that we're just addressing the driving lanes until the storm subsides. Then we can get all the staff, the equipment, and then we'll go curb to curb. So what are some of the challenges is availability of staff, knowing that people come in and they're working and then all of a sudden a snowstorm occurs at 3 p.m. So now you have 8 hours of people participating in work, and now you have to schedule for a cycle of staff that comes in at third shift to be able to address the snow and ice issues. Plow drivers, they're so good. We're excited. We got a lot of young, experienced individuals that are excited to see how they develop, but 40% of our plow drivers are 3 years or less. So we ask for patience, but we are trying to address that as well. Far as the amount of hours of operation, again, we do have federal guidelines through the commercial driver's license of no more than 12 actual driving and 16 hours of on duty and driving. We always have to consider what other city services do we have to either postpone or delay due to the storm. So if we do a full plow operation, we usually have to postpone or delay those type of services, which could be electrical, forestry, but most importantly, the garbage and refuse. Other ones is, as I mentioned, lake enhancement. That kind of throws everything off a monkey wrench where it just kind of, ooh, I didn't see that happening. Where the lake enhancement will just do a circle around our area and increase the precipitation. As I mentioned, intermittent plowing. So if we call off the drivers on the main thoroughfares and they're going to the residential sections, 140 miles we're trying to cover. So actually 280 miles. So if we do one pass each direction, these vehicles have to stop, go, work themselves around parked vehicles, and it takes time. So we usually call it not 5, not 10, but 15 people. But again, that takes away from the availability of a full plow operation at a later time. Special requests, it's hard to do. We do have elderly individuals, handicapped individuals that need assistance. We try to accommodate, or we try to get a means where someone can correct or take care of those issues. There are other issues that could occur, water main breaks, traffic control, street lighting that could be damaged or knocked down, trees could be felled or limbs. So overnight parking. So no vehicle can be parked on a street or municipal lot from the hours of 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. So overnight parking, again, regular overnight parking from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., you cannot be parked on a municipal lot or a city street, main thoroughfare as well as a residential street, unless you are an emergency vehicle or you have a valid night parking permit through the West Allis Police Department. So how do you determine what side to park on? So today is a odd day. So parking vehicles before midnight, park on the side of the street that matches the current date. So I'm going home, I'm an early person to bed. So at 7:30 when I go to bed, kidding. But when I go to bed, it's what? Odd or even. You look at the calendar and then you park on odd or even for that time frame. In the after, if you're working third shift or if you are getting home after midnight, you have to look at the previous calendar date. That will tell you that, hey, odd or even, that's where I need to park. I got home late, and I got to remember, prior to midnight, I need to go odd or even, whatever that date is. That would help. That would help so much if people can, I know it's hard, but that would be great if we can get all the vehicles on one side so we can plow more efficiently. Now, by doing that, you are able to park either even or odd from 3 a.m. to 5:59 or 6 a.m. 3 hours that you can park on that one side. Otherwise, after those time frames are done, you can park on either side from 6 a.m. all the way to the next, 2:59 in the morning. That's a long time. So meanwhile, who's out there trying to plow the streets and trying to get to both sides of the streets? And people will inquire, well, why did you call a snow emergency when we only had 4 inches of snow? That's why. We're trying to divert and get all the parked cars onto one side. So a lot of the challenges are the number of hours that could be worked by staff. Staff are awesome. The employees are awesome because nobody knows that when they work a first shift, we are now asking them, can you come back on third shift? They come back on first shift, can you come back on third shift? They get 8 hours of rest and they're back at it. So they're away from their own family. They have to shovel their own driveways. But again, we just ask for your patience. Long duration storms are unpredictable. I think I covered this one. Snow emergencies. So the Director of Public Works, when he would confer with the mayor and the city administrator, can call a snow emergency. They can be, yep. So between those hours, they can be towed by the police department. So it's, I think, at discretion, but it's also if we can't get through a street, which occurs a lot, they're so narrow, we will talk to the police department. Thanks, Todd. it makes it longer, you know, but
And then after you're calling and complaining, like, when you call them in.
and again, I'm not saying we're perfect either. You know, I mean, we're learning and we're trying to do the best that we can, and they are. But yep.
I want to thank you for the presentation. As an alder, we get a lot of complaints, as you do. We don't always get the attaboys or attagirls. However, can you explain what a snow event is? Because this storm wasn't a singular storm. And when we get complaints, per se, about people who haven't shoveled a sidewalk, other things, it may not have to do with DPW, it has to do with code enforcement. But a snow event, if you could explain it, there could be multiple snow events within that week, and the time starts over for enforcement of doing sidewalks and other things.
So, a snow event for us is when we, per the RMC, I'm trying to think 10-point, you know, I can't remember the exact code, but 3 inches or more. So when it's 3 inches or more, we have to do, or we're required to do a full plow operation. Now, Alderperson Grisham is mentioning a snow event. So anything that's more than, I want to say, like 1 inch or a half an inch, help me out, I think it's 1 inch, is a snow event, a separate independent event. So that means when you're doing your sidewalks, or potentially the sidewalks, you have another snow event occur, it recalculates the clock from X amount of hours down to 0 again. And again, the individuals have potentially 24 hours to address that issue. So, okay, so snow emergency, I just want to say the main thoroughfares, when that's declared for that time frame, you cannot park on main thoroughfares. How many main thoroughfares do we have? Test question. 33. So next. So this is a residential going on to national. So it happens, but trying to get a 11-foot blade down to address the street surface is somewhat hard and nerve-wracking, but sometimes we just gotta pull the blade up and just get through safely so we're not damaging any parked cars. So snow emergency regulations, as is indicated there in 10.11, is no person shall park or leave unattended any vehicle on a main thoroughfare unless there are some exceptions. And I promise you all 33 are listed there, but if you need to clarify or identify, it is available on the city website. Snow and ice emergency, when it is declared, overnight parking is not allowed unless you have a overnight parking permit from the West Allis Police Department. You're not allowed to even park on a main thoroughfare, so all 33 streets. So parking vehicles before midnight, you park on the side of the street that matches the current date. So again, today's the 29th, before midnight, you look at the calendar, it's odd, I would park on the odd side until when? Well, there's a chart there that says park on the odd side of the street from midnight to 3 p.m. So that's different from the regular parking restrictions from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. What we did is we made it longer. We increased the time from midnight all the way to 2:59 or 3 p.m. during the afternoon. And that is to allow us adequate time to try to address those areas on the even side where there should be no parking. And I just want to put some pictures in there that kind of shows kind of a little bit of some obstacles. Go ahead. And there you're coming up into an intersection where traffic is narrow. You're kind of looking at how am I going to address this. Go ahead. Sometimes we do have obstacles. We do have downed limbs or felled trees. And there's the most recent storm. We had about 300 trees affected by either a down limb or trees that had to be cut down. This is a front end loader. They're trying to get through a narrow street where parking is on both sides. Go ahead. So in order to do so, they have to lift the plow blade up. Go ahead. And pass through. Now, when you do that, you're not touching that snow in between the cars. Go ahead. Some of the common questions are, do we plow and salt all the streets in the city? We try. Yes, main thoroughfares, salt, plow. We try to get down to where it's really good pavement, so adequate traffic can be done. Residential and alleys are thereafter. What can I do about snow plows that block my driveway with snow? I really don't know. I do know that sometimes people park cars prior to the driveway, and again, there's just a large accumulation, and when we do go through again, replow it, a large amount will enter into a driveway or approach. Will the snowplow ever completely clear my residential street? That's based on environmental, how soon we can get to the street, the temperature, and what material, how it works. So the answer would be no. I have only on-street parking. Why do you always plow snow against my vehicle? Because it's there. Because the plow blade is always tilted towards the curb area, so therefore the snow is deposited towards the curb, so therefore anything parked there will be kind of a large accumulation of snow against it. Why is my street always plowed last? Well, you always have to have a first, initial, and an end. And we do try to have some strategy where we avoid left-hand turns. So if you're plowing, you want to do right turns throughout the plow route. Anytime you do a left-hand turn, you're looking on both lanes of traffic, and you have traffic concerns, more waiting. So that's kind of the root issue there. What can I do to help? Understanding that we're not perfect. When you do call, we do take all the calls seriously, and with all the concerns, we try to rectify as soon as possible. But just patience. We have every intent of clearing the roadways. All the employees, when they're working long hours, they do have to go home. They probably have to clear their own driveway, so on and so forth, and within 8 hours, report back to work. Again, during the storm, if you would, remember that during a storm, we don't go curb to curb. We only focus on the driving lanes to allow adequate traffic going from point A to point B. Adhere to parking regulations that we covered tonight, as well as do not cast snow onto the street or other right-of-ways or your neighbor. You're not supposed to do that, but we do have individuals, once the plow has gone through, individuals will plow their, snow blow their sidewalks onto the street again, and it'll ice up and cause some hazards. Help your neighbor. Converse with your neighbor. Get to know your neighbor. There might be a neighbor that needs help, who's elderly or disabled, and the more help that you can provide, assistance, will bring on a more closeness of the neighborhood. And I think the more discussion that you have, I think, and work together, that you can kind of strategize and say, yeah, we can park on the odd side. Yep. So it kind of causes more conversation. So ideally, that's our goal, us to do our job. And again, accessibility will increase efficiency, but that's perfect right there. So with that, that's all I have. Sorry for the long presentation. So it's salt water. It's a solution. There's no carbohydrate mixture in it.
I'm familiar with it, but I'm just curious, have we tried beet or the cheese curd runoff?
No, we haven't.
Great alternatives, and they do less damage to the roads, which in the long run with potholes and things.
Yeah.
So
So there's other products that are out there for specialized brine. There is a company within City of West Allis that we contract with that offer a variety of brine solutions and products. But the examples that you gave as far as beet juice, I think that was in Beloit, they had some issues where, you know, some of the contaminants were on people's shoes and going and contaminated within the house. It was coloring various places inside their car, so it was tracking. Cheese was another one that it didn't go well. We didn't hear a positive response, but it's just, you gotta have the availability of the product, and we never really looked at those.
Because they use it, it's pretty widespread, just so you know, in the state, and I know many townships that use beet juice or beet runoff. I'm not sure of the details, but I've never heard of any residue, but I still think it would be worth looking into, especially if it has less wear and tear on our roads, because ultimately then that's less repairs that we need to do.
Yep, and brine is, and that beet juice, that would be a carbohydrate, but yeah, we haven't really looked in that in full detail. Okay, any other questions? Yep.
During the last snowstorm, we had power outages and a lot of downed trees. Do you pull CDL drivers to help out with downed trees, or CDL plows are strictly just a plow guys?
So, good question. So what we did is, we had 9 forestry arborists that plow for us. All 9 of them were removed from the snow plows. They were on bucket trucks. They were responding to those various downed trees or limbs. We actually used some fleet personnel, repair people, to work our excavator with the coupler that was shown there. He was a good operator, and he just stepped in and he helped out. So yes, we took him away from the plowing and kind of, what do we do? We did look at outsourcing, and we did outsource some of the removals as well, because it was just the urgency of, freeing up and opening up the streets. But yeah, good question. Yep. I'm not aware. I know that was coordinated through the senior center. I haven't heard if they.
We unfortunately, the second year had about 88 requests and only 4 angels.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we tried pushing it out and recruiting, but just didn't get anywhere.
But get to know your neighbor. That once you know and you converse, help each other out, it goes big. Anything else? Yep.
Well, 3 years ago, we had a snowstorm in January, about 10 inches of snow, snow emergency and all that was August. I drove around my neighborhood and counted about a dozen cars that were illegally parked, around midnight. Call us out, call it in. No tickets are issued. Do you encourage us to call in illegally parked cars or not? To make your job easier?
Yeah, I mean, if you have illegally parked cars, I would say they call the police non-emergency number, and then they can take those accordingly as time permits. So, yep.
Nothing was done, there's no record of it in my case. I want to find out if anything was done about it.
Good question. Yep.
Dave, maybe circle back to what Mr. Nickel was just saying, being that the captain stated that you coordinate together what blocks you're on and whatnot, or what areas of the city. How does that impact when you're inundated with all these phone calls for illegally parked cars? Because you do answer every individual call, correct?
I'll be honest, we don't get a ton of people calling about illegally parked cars during storms, because they're in fact doing other things, and they recognize, most people recognize
that a lot of our residents need to have a little bit more of a realistic approach on that because there are so many moving parts in storms. So, thank you.
How much is the fine?
The ticket is, if we're writing you a snow emergency ticket, it's only $30, I believe. I think snow emergency maybe 40, actual snow emergency ticket. Most of our other tickets are approximately 30, a snow emergency is 40. And I don't really know what the tow costs you because the reality is the city of West Allis doesn't make any money off the tow. It's the tow company does, so I'm sure they have a set fee, whatever their fee is, so they deal with the tow.
So we don't have our own tow trucks?
No.
Okay.
I was on a ride along that night. We were writing tickets, believe me, when we weren't on other calls. When we were in assembly, the sergeant said, Clemente says, write tickets tonight. So we did. And we weren't sitting there waiting until the tow truck came. We'd move on to the next issue or whatever. It was about an hour turnaround for ticket, call it in, tow truck to show up. And they're taking them, several miles away. They're not taking them to, like, somewhere in West Allis. They're 110 late. So it's like an hour and a half turnaround for a tow truck. So we were writing tickets, Jim.
I was talking to you. Don't talk. We can talk later.
I'm sorry, what?
Talk later.
Okay.
We will, we will.
The contractor we have has a lot. But you gotta, like, I think was alluded to earlier, every community is needing tow trucks during the snowstorm, whether it's a car accident or vehicles, so it's just the trucks that.
Yep.
Quick one. How many civilian parking officers are there now?
We currently have 2 full-timers, 1 part.
Is that considered full staff?
No, I'm working it right now. I just had a process posted. I'm trying to fill the other full-time position now. Yes, you asked a moment ago about why would we have our own tow company?
Yes, because I know Brookfield does. Does
Their
Brookfield-
own tow,
I believe they have their own tow truck, or one of the suburbs over there. To me, I just, we're building this new public works building. We're gonna keep the old one and use it and have part of it, my understanding from the committee meetings, the police department might utilize. I mean, is there revenue in it to have someone dedicated to doing tows and like parking enforcement or something, and if we have a place to put the cars, it's more revenue for our city that we don't have to, pay a contractor. I'm just trying to think if that's even doable option, because other police departments do that.
I would say that probably is beyond the scope of either Dave or myself for what we're here for tonight. I don't know that Brookfield has one. I think the vast majority of municipalities use a tow service because there's a lot of money that, just sort of thinking back over the years, we've had a number of discussions about removing cars. There's overhead that goes into a tow truck that you're not using all the time, and then storage. I mean, we have enough trouble with storing the cars that we have to keep in our department for maintenance, let alone a tow lot. So that's kind of a much broader topic that probably we can discuss here this one evening. But I know the vast majority, certainly for police departments, use different towing services.
Anything else? If not, I do like to thank the police department for responding to our requests and also our public works staff. I just want to acknowledge them.
So I'm Deputy Chief Fletcher from the Police Department. We're going to be starting the crime stats portion in a second, but I just want to thank Dave for coming out and for everybody else for being here today. It's been nice to see some people. Last few meetings, we haven't had as many faces in the crowd, so it's nice to see everybody here, and we appreciate the discussion and the questions.
We work closely with DPW, not just in snowstorms, but on other events all throughout the year. His staff comes out and helps us out with Highway 100 things, also at crash scenes, and we have a very good working relationship. We're not perfect. I think Dave said that a few times, and I know we would agree that we're not perfect, and we always try to make things better. And I think we have over the last few years. And I know it's something whenever we have these type of events, Dave will go back with his staff and talk about it, and we are reaching out to them to see how we can do things better. So we thank Dave for his partnership. We're now going to be going over the crime stats for the last quarter. What you're going to see are a bunch of slides with about the 8 or so uniformed, Part 1 uniform crime statistics. There are 8 different crime categories. These are the crime categories that the FBI basically uses across the country to compare communities to one another as far as how you're doing crime-wise. Each state has different statutes that are slightly different, and these categories are kind of created by the FBI in order so you can compare apples to oranges and so forth. So for the most part, I'm going to let Captain Clemente do the talking about them, but I'll jump in on some questions as well. But again, this is the fourth quarter UCR Part 1 crimes for West Allis for 2024, or 2023, sorry. Getting a year ahead of us.
Just to give you an idea what I do, I'm Captain Clemente. Currently, I run patrol, the entire patrol division, so anything, when you're seeing a squad that has a person, an officer in it, they're typically under my supervision. As part of this, I go through these. Before I come to these, I kind of go through the different categories of all the reports I get or that we've gotten over the course of in this case, the last 3 months. And I try to look at them and try to figure out why they went up, why they went down, or what they really mean. Because you can look at a number and see, wow, that seems like a really significant number. And really, most of you are just concerned of one thing. Are you safe in the city of West Allis? As you go out and about, if you go to the grocery store, if you go to a friend's house, if you're in your own home, are you safe? So I try to go through and look at what the reports are and see how we got where we are. I think when you look at like in the first category, you see the homicides that went up. I believe that is our, chief, is that the bugging out homicide? Those 2 homicides, the bugging out homicide, and then the one at the end of the year on the east end of our city. So those are, one was a issue at a bar, and the other one was a family, residential, the family homicide that was happened, I think, in December. I think that was in December, November. So you can see we've got some elevation in things. Overall robberies did go up slightly, 35%. Aggravated assaults went up, and we looked at that, and we believe for those, we believe that part of that is a change in how we did some of our stats. Our system used to calculate by a different thing. We went to now more of a charge-based calculation. So we believe that some of it just rose because of how we categorized it, not so much that they used to sit in a different category, which was outside of the aggravated assault category. So they just jumped up a little bit in that category. Then burglaries went up briefly, or a little bit. Same with motor vehicle thefts, arsons, which are fairly low as it is in overall thefts. And overall thefts are pretty simple. That can be retail thefts, anything of that nature. It's not anything specific. We can get down into specifics. Last year to this year, 14 last year, 19 this year. I went through them. You can see how they're laid out. 19 total, 6 business, 1 gas station, 5 residents, 7 the street. Then it's strong arm, just meaning there was some sort of maybe a physical violence, not gun, knife, nothing like that used, or a threat of violence. So those are robberies, and then you have 2 for firearms, 2 for knife, and 2 other. I went through there to try to figure out what they really were to give you a better idea of what happened. Of those 19, 5 were known parties. So in other words, the victim actually knew who it was. So in some cases, it was drug-related or a family or a friend. Somebody breaks into their house while they're there, and it turns out it's a friend that they identify. Oh, yeah, that's this person. I know these people. So 5 of them were known parties. 5 were strangers. We did have 5 incidents that were stranger involved. 6 of the business-related ones. I think one was a gas station in which the individual eventually said they didn't want anything done. We had 2 uncooperative victims in the course of that, and 1 was a mental health crisis. So the bulk of, although we did have 5 that were stranger-related, there weren't, the bulk of them aren't. They are typically either known parties or they're business-related. And like I said, of those, 8 of the 19, we made arrests in those. And I believe it is in 3 of the 5 of the stranger-related ones, we were able to make arrests. One person, I think the business one, they didn't want anything done, and another person was uncooperative also. So we can move on from there. There's no real statistical, or there's no, if you look at the map up there, you won't see like, well, they're clustered in one area. It's not a specific point where you can go, okay, if we do more in this one location, we might be able to solve these or at least limit them. They're kind of sporadic. You know, your business robberies are typically on major thoroughfares or major roads so people can get away quickly. They're kind of, I don't want to say mapped out, but there's to some degree they're thought about, well, where can I do this and then get on a major road and get out. So there's not really this cluster that says, all right, if we do X, we'll be able to prevent them. So that's just kind of, they're kind of all over. I went through the burglaries, same thing. We're down a little bit this year. Quite a bit down, and when you look at the residential, which is good, because residential meaning your home, your apartments, things of that nature. Garage burglaries went up slightly. Business burglaries went down a little bit. I looked more into those. Of those 12 residential burglaries, it includes 3 places which they're storage units. They're storage units within like an apartment complex. So although they title them in residential, because it's in a residential facility, it's not actually a home. It's somebody burglarizing their basement, going in their basement and hitting all their storage units. In some cases, it was many storage units. But like I said, they're not actually somebody's legitimate home. The 6 businesses, in those cases, unfortunately, we don't always get as much evidence, so we don't have as many arrests. We have 1 arrest in those, and there's 3 open investigations. A lot of those, when you looked into the reports of the residential ones, it was people pointing a finger at, oh, I think it was my neighbor. I think it was, it might have been this person, where they think they might know who it is, but there's never enough or never understanding of what they are. And garages are one of those things that are just, as they ramp up and they come and go depending on the time of the season. As you get in October, November, December, people want snow blowers. They start kicking in garage doors and stealing snow blowers. The unfortunate thing is when I looked into some of the reports, people don't secure their garages. I don't know why you leave your doors unlocked in your garage. It makes an easy thing for the kid or the individual that's looking, the scrappers, whatever it is. They go down, they go at night, and they'll fiddle their garage door. If it's open, it makes it easy. And they'll go in, they'll take a snowblower, and they go. If you can secure your garage door, yes, people can still kick it in, and they will kick it in if they really want something in it. But if you do a better job of securing it, putting a deadbolt on it, locking it, making sure you're not leaving your car outside unlocked with the remote in it. Some people like to do that. They just click the remote, they open your car door, they click the remote, they go in. So try to make it more difficult for the guy who wants to steal your stuff out of your garage. If you can put lights out, motion lights. Now there's so many ability to put wireless cameras up. Put a camera in your back so that if somebody does come up your driveway, if somebody is prowling up your alley, then you at least potentially will get some video. It allows us to do something. It's difficult if we have nothing to go on, no video footage, no anything evidentiary-wise, to try to figure out who may have kicked in somebody's garage door when we have nothing to see. There's nothing to look for. Nobody saw anything, because alleys are difficult, because if you're in your house, how often are you looking out your back window at your garage? You're not. So you have to be somewhat proactive to try to take care of yourself, take care of your property, lock it up appropriately, and make sure that you're doing the simple things you can to try to protect it the best you can. So it's just simple things like that. Like I said, lights, cameras, using a better lock, making it very apparent that door, your pedestrian door that they're going to kick in, is solid. It's not going to, if they give it one kick, it doesn't open, and then they move on to something else. They'll keep moving on. Or, as neighbors, what Dave said earlier, pay attention to your neighbors, be friendly with your neighbors. pay attention to what's going on in your neighborhood. If you see something that looks suspicious, if you see the guy at 2 o'clock in the morning all dressed in black with his hoodie up prowling down the alley, call the police department. There's officers in our late nights, trust me, they're ready and raring and want to get down there, and they'd like to make that arrest if they can. So call 302-8000, 911 if it's an emergency, and somebody will come. We always come. We'll try to get there and try to do what we can to do to try to catch the person that's doing burglaries in the alley. Those are those. Once again, there isn't a catch-all to say, all right, they're always in this area. They're kind of spread out throughout the city. Yes, they do tend to happen more for like garage burglaries and stuff that are in alleys because people don't pay attention. At 2 o'clock in the morning, there's far more cops up and down alleys than there are actually residents that are going into their alley to sing because they're typically at home. But the police officers know that that's where the people are going to be using, and they're going in and out alleys. They're driving up and down the streets, and they're looking at anything suspicious in those alleys. Aggravated assaults, and this is what I talked about earlier about people wanting to know and wanting to feel safe. This is one of those categories that people think aggravated assaults, people getting beaten up, people having trouble with as they're going to and from places. So this is a category I looked at quite extensively today. There was a slight rise, and some of this, when I looked further into it, this is one of those categories that when we changed how we count things or how we stat things, making a change to charge-based statistics elevated them a little bit, I believe. Not significantly, but I think they're historically up this year in general. They went up a little bit, and part of that I think is due to just making a change in how we count things, not the fact that there's a lot more of them than there were. It's just how we looked at it and how we categorized it. So in comparison to last year, they went up by 3. Looking at the numbers, family versus non-family and the weapons, what I did find is even when you look at non-family, I'd say close to 90% of these incidents that are happening are either a specific family member or a known party. It's people that you associate with, which really the police department can't stop who you associate with. So it's part of what the problem is it's knowing who you're hanging out with. Some of the other ones, we had a lot more domestic violence related ones and child abuse related, so they all tie into the same group. If you have a physical abuse of a child, if a father hurts his son, daughter, mom, whatever, they all get lumped into the same category. They all get lumped into this aggravated assault. So a lot of them were either domestic violence related or child abuse related. The stranger ones, if you had a couple in there, I think I found 3 or 4 that were actually just stranger related. Most of those are either 3 of them were bar related. So being at a bar at 2 in the morning, once again, one of those things that if you're in a bar drinking, nothing really good happens at 2 in the morning in a bar. They were bar events. One was a road rage event. So once again, things that we necessarily aren't going to be able to prevent in the moment. I can only make good suggestions of what you should do is maybe, choose your friends wisely, choose who you're hanging out with. And one of the events that when the firearm events, we took 4 reports related to one incident. One gentleman went out of his house 4 different times and kept shooting in the air, and they couldn't, we got calls on it, but nobody could pinpoint where exactly it took place. So this guy did it 4 different times before we were finally able to pinpoint which house it is. Well, that counts as 4 different incidents, which raised the numbers. So it's just kind of a weird thing. And the other one with the shots fired with the firearm, that we had a retail theft where in the individual, they got confronted on their way out. They boxed two people boxed them in as they were leaving, and that individual then involved in the retail theft took a shot in the direction of somebody. It becomes an aggravated assault in this case. It's just how it's categorized. So although the numbers look like, whoa, this is kind of dangerous, once again, almost all of these, with the exception of a few, are somehow related to the people that they are either family with or are friends with. So overall, when you walk around the city of West Allis and you go to different places, maybe not all the bars at 2 in the morning, But as a general rule, you're safe in the city of West Allis. You can come and go as you please, and you're 99% of the time are not going to have any issues with people. It's just not, although some would say, well, that looks like something's going to happen. It's just not that way. It's who people are associating with and who their family members are, which you can't, they tell me you can change who you associate with, but you can't change your family in most cases, so kind of stuck with them. But same thing all over the city, not one pinpoint of where they're occurring. Motor vehicle thefts. I looked into this a little bit just to see if we're still in the same idea of what's being stolen, and the continued trend continues as it has been for a while. It's Hyundais and Kias. And I'm sure we all have seen the news where there's somebody has had they've got the club and they've gotten the anti-theft stuff and people are still able to steal the cars. So the reality is I think you're going to continue to see some of those things, and they don't get stolen from one place or another. They're kind of stolen from all over. There were 51 of them in the course of the last 3 months, which was up from last year, which last year we had a little bit of a reduction. We had a huge amount of them, and then they pared down a little bit. And for whatever reason, the last 3 months, they've risen a little bit. But like I said, there's not a lot of specifics, 1 second, as far as where they're coming from. We had a few that were stolen from like a dealerships, things of that nature. They got stolen off the lots. But streets, alleys, it's just a matter of trying to protect your car the best you can. Some people leave them unlocked. There's always that idea of, well, do I leave my car unlocked so that nobody breaks my window? Do I lock my car and close the windows tight, and then if they want it, they're going to break it? Well, the reality is if they're going to steal your car and you don't leave the keys in it, when they get in it, they're going to tear open your column anyway to get it anyway. So they're going to cause damage no matter what. Your best bet is to secure it the best you can. If you get a club, something that's visible, do that. Park in a location where it's well lit. That's always good. If you have a garage, by all means, clean it out and use it. I can't fathom how people have so much stuff and they got their car out parked on the slab, but yet they've got a garage and it's just filled with stuff. Use your garage. That's what it's there for. It'll safeguard your vehicle just a little bit at least. Just try to do the best you can to secure it. If somebody wants it, the reality is if it fits to whatever they're looking for, if the time is right, or if in this case, if it is a car that is easily stolen, they may try to steal it. Yes, sir.
Were there any carjacking?
We had one recently. We had one individual, a woman on the east end of our city, in which they attempted to carjack her. They got her car, but thankfully, officers were not too far behind, and they actually took the gentleman into custody. And as last that I looked, they did charge him. I don't know the specifics of what they exactly charged him with, but he was arrested and was taken into custody and ultimately charged. So that was a good case with good results. Not a good case that it happened, but the end result is we did get two people in custody, and they did get charged. So you will know there is a little bit of this is the one where you will see a little bit of there's far more on our east end than there are on our west end. Part of that is probably from the simple fact that the further west you get in our city, the more driveways there are. If I'm a thief, I'm probably not going to go walking up somebody's driveway to go steal their car. But if it's in an alley where there isn't anybody, nobody's watching, I'm more likely to try to grab that because I'm less likely to get caught. If I'm a thief, if you're a thief, you're trying to do the things that's going to bring the least amount of attention to you, so you go where people aren't watching. And you also see it's more on our east end, again, in this case, it's up by Hobby Lobby. In some places, those are parking lots. They're taking them off parking lots too. So you get a load like during the day where everybody's at work. The Summit, I think that's going to be around Summit View and the different corporate centers. There's a lot of cars there. It's like car shopping for the thief. It gives them, it's just opportunity. It's opportunity where they can, that's why you see a little bit of a cluster there. Just because the vast amount of cars there at one point or during the day, it's just a matter of that. Yes, sir.
Is it strictly Kias and Hyundais?
When I looked today, I actually saw F-150s. I saw, a few Honda Pilots. It's not one, those were there were more of those two vehicles than there were others. Like, there was no clear thing of, oh, yeah, we're hitting, but there was a Volkswagen Passat, there was, there's a bunch of different vehicles, but those Hyundai and Kia, if there were 51 of them, they accounted for at least 20 of them. So kind of that thing is, so yes, they're the bulk, the rest kind of sporadic of, it just depends on what it is. And there's not one type of Hyundai or Kia. It's just in that moment, for right now, we're still in that time period where those are the easiest, there's still the ability to steal them. So, but like just the other day, Officer Banky on nights saw five or six kids in an alley. They ended up foot pursuit, whatever, they end up stopping them, and these kids they all have hoods on, they've got masks with them, gloves, and they're all carrying the tools in which you need to steal that specific, those specific types of cars. So, good officer, out there looking in alleys, paying attention to exactly what I just told you guys that you got to pay attention to, the alleys and what's going on behind you. He does that, and he ends up stopping 5 kids that get arrested. Thankfully, before they stole anybody's car, so I guarantee that had he not done that, we would have gotten reports the next day of, multiple cars that were stolen, because they were all ready to do it. They all had the stuff that was needed to steal Hyundais and Kias. They do, they did, but they were able quick. They had enough squads quick enough to make to get to them and corral them and ultimately take them into custody. So, and they get to, I think if I remember correctly, multiple of them were missings from other areas, so they ended up getting shipped back to wherever, back to their own homes or back to other police departments. Because the good thing is we got them before they did anything wrong, really. The bad thing is when you do that, you're also limiting what you can arrest them for, too, because they haven't yet done what they were going to do. So we prevented it, but there aren't any harsh consequences that people, I want justice, I want accountability. Well, the accountability came from the fact that they got a ticket or they had to go back to their house where they were missing from or a runaway from, but there's not like some jail time they're going to get there. They get a ticket. So we prevented something, which then helps, because somebody has their car that probably wouldn't have had it otherwise. So, and lastly is our theft. And theft clearly went up. But theft is one of those things, this encompasses a lot of different things, from shoplifting to theft from autos, so people, breaking into a car or stealing somebody's change out of a car, to auto parts, so when people were cutting off the catalytic converters, stealing tires, rims, all those things. It's a wide variety of different things. It's not just one thing. And you can see, well, it was Christmas time. Retail theft goes up for Christmas because some people shop, other people steal. It's just how they get their gifts. So it's just a lot of different things. And when you jump to the next picture, I don't get a map. Well, I suppose the map would be crazy. It'd be all over. It would be all you'd see a ton of them at Home Depot. Home Depot still gets a lot of different things. So it's just a lot of different mass thefts around the city, but nothing specific that you're really, what we try to do is our biggest thing is on patrol. Is over the course of last year, do you remember the number of traffic stops?
Close to 8,000.
So our biggest thing is we try to have the cops be as visible as possible. So they're out there making as many traffic stops and trying to engage with the community by making traffic stops. So the theory, the idea is if we're out there stopping people for whatever infraction it may be, we're stopping you, we could potentially be stopping you on the way to commit a theft or on the way back from a theft. And the reality is if you're a criminal and you know that if you come to West Allis, there's a higher probability that you're going to get stopped on your way in or out. Are you going to come here? The answer is I wouldn't. I would rather not. I would rather go to some place where the police don't pay attention to me. I can go in and I can go out without ever being seen, but that's not the case here. We do a ton of traffic stops. Like I said, it's 8,000 or so. I think it's a little over 8,000, but it's a lot more traffic stops. Last year I was happy, I think we did around 7,000. So we increased this past year by almost 1,000 traffic stops. And although they may not reflect it in that one thing, I've been here for nearly 27 years, and there were many times where we would get reports, or we'd take reports of multiple garages being entered at the same time. Like you'd go back through and you'd go, okay, we got an alley that was filled with 6 or 7 garages that got hit on one block. We have not seen that in the last couple of years. And I think part of it is it's a combination of just different things like the flock camera system, which alert us to vehicles that are stolen or maybe involved in other crimes when they drive through our city, when they're in our city. And the fact that our cops are out there being proactive, driving through alleys, stopping the 5 kids or trying to stop the 5 kids when they see them at 2 o'clock in the morning that look like they're up to no good, making those proactive stops, and in this case, making traffic stops. So we're always trying to be involved and be seen doing our job.
Is Amazon packages under this category?
Yes. Yep.
You see an uptick around Christmas or?
Well, anytime you start getting more and more deliveries, because they're vulnerable. And people know that. They see them. In some cases, we'll have groups that go out and they'll follow the different company. They'll follow a truck and they'll go take them off shortly thereafter. That's why if you're going to have something, if you have something important being delivered, obviously tracking it on your phone and maybe setting up with a neighbor. I know if I'm going to have something delivered and I know it's of value, I either give specific instructions that may or may not be adhered to, or I'm going to tell my neighbor who is home, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you look every once in a while to see if this is on the, I'm getting this delivered sometime today. Or when I get it, I text them, hey, can you go check it? They said it just got dropped off, and try to pick it up. So try to be proactive when you have expensive things. Or utilize somebody's house where that, maybe you don't have it delivered to your house. Maybe you have it delivered to your work or something, or someplace where somebody's going to be. Yes?
Okay, the theft from motor vehicle got my attention. But again, I believe a lot of these crimes are those of opportunity. You mentioned garage doors. Of these 43 thefts of the motor vehicle, what's the count on locked doors on the vehicle?
I would have to look specifically. I don't know. It's not uncommon. Like I said, there's a school of thought that some people say I don't want to lock my doors because then they're just going to break my window to get in to get my change. It all depends. I would rather go with the thought that don't leave anything in your car that looks valuable. And some people do that. They'll leave laptops. They'll leave all kinds of stuff sitting on their seat. Even if it's in your garage, if somebody goes in your garage, like my daughter, for whatever reason, she always locks the car in the garage. I don't know why. She just always does. But the reality is nothing of value sits in the car. It shouldn't. There's no need to. And especially if you're going to leave it out on the street, in your alley, or, take those things in with you. Because if somebody walks up, it's funny, we just got a ring video from one of the alder persons this past week because somebody walked up to their cars in the alley and did the old peek. They're looking through the window to see what they can see, and that's what they do. That's what people do. If there may be, that individual may have been looking to steal the car or just looking to see what's in it, because I think they actually tried the door. But that's just a matter of, it's opportunity. And if you give somebody an opportunity to steal your iPhone, your MacBook, whatever you left in your car, you just got to be smarter than that, because just take those things in with you. Make sure you have your stuff. Locked doors or not. But a lot of times, they are unlocked. Even like garages, they're unlocked too.
Christian, I don't know the percentage either, but there's always a significant number of them, either through vehicle thefts or the theft from auto, or the things inside the auto. And I guess I just take this opportunity to kind of a public service announcement of, it amazes me, and it kind of comes in spurts, but there'll be some times where we see in our reports for the week where we have individuals who have their cars entered, but they didn't lock them, and they're leaving firearms in their car. So if you own a firearm, please, there's no reason, you should ever have your firearm stored in your car. And it's really amazing how many we get a year of stolen firearms, where people leave their car or truck unlocked and leave their loaded firearm in their glove box. That's just full of danger, and chances are, that gun is going to be turned and used in a crime, whether it's here in West Allis or somewhere else in the Metro Milwaukee area. So if you're a gun owner, please be a responsible gun owner and don't leave your gun in your unlocked vehicle.
That's why he's the deputy chief. There.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do parking checkers, do they ticket cars that don't have license plates on them?
No, they're all our parking checkers are really doing is they're dealing with the parking ordinances themselves. They actually can't write a no license for a vehicle that doesn't have valid registration. That has to be an officer. And if we drive around the city, we will try to take care of those in some cases, especially if they're connected with a complaint or something like that. But we just don't run every license plate, and cars are parked sometimes, people are moving cars or whatever. We don't actually always get to do that's got no plate, we're gonna go and deal with that. There's just lots of other moving things to do other than trying to deal with those. If there's a specific complaint, like if you call and you say, I've got a car across the street from my house, it never moves, it's got no plates, and you call it in and I get it, I'm gonna create a complaint for that specific car, and then officers will be sent to check on that specifically, usually during night parking. That's who deals with most of the stuff that when I get for people that have parking issues, the cars that aren't moving. I try to deal with those through night parking because it's the simplest, it's the cleanest, because we can deal with it as the fact that it's not moving, or we can ticket it for the fact that it maybe doesn't have a permit, or it's wrong cider, and then if there's consecutive tickets, then it can be towed because of those reasons. It's a simpler process that costs the city less time to try to just deal with them individually on that basis. But if you have a car that has no license plate, you can call it in and we'll deal with it. We just, as a general rule, aren't running around the city looking for that specific violation.
And you mentioned earlier about things possibly looking in windows.
Yep.
Anything of value in the car. Can you address tinted windows?
As far as what, whether they're legal or illegal? There's thresholds. Last time I did this, I think I got it backwards. The back windows can be tinted darker. They have to allow 35% of light in. Front windows or front driver's side and passenger side have to be 50%. So they can only be tinted. Is that right? I always get that backwards. I used to write this ticket a lot when I was younger, but I haven't written the ticket in a while. And like I said, I always seem to get it flip-flop now. But yeah, there's a certain percentage. But on parked cars, we don't deal with it on a parked car. It's only on cars that are in motion that are driving. And to be perfectly honest, there's a lot of them. There are a ton of cars that have dark tint. And during the day, you can typically see them, but a lot of them are getting stopped at night because you can't see anything through them. I drove a tinted car for a while for my former role here, and it's very difficult to see at 10 o'clock at night in a vehicle that has tint on it. So they do get stopped, and we deal with them when they're in motion versus, because we don't know whose car it is. It may be registered to somebody, but and the other thing is if you're going to write a ticket for it, you have to be able to test it. And to test it, you have to roll the window down. They have to put a little thing on it that basically reads the amount of light going through it. And it's judged on how much light is passing through the vehicle or through the window, how much it can see. Shops don't care. They're not paid they're getting paid to put it on. What you do with it, that's not their problem. And just because I've gotten them, I've written tickets for them as far as low as under 5%. So they allow 5% of light to come through it. So it just depends. I'm gonna go, you were first earlier. Go ahead.
I was quite alarmed when I saw a posting through the West Allis Police Department about the post office, that it is no longer safe to do your banking through the mailbox in West Allis.
Not so much not safe. There is a concern right now. We've had some issues with people potentially entering those blue boxes.
Well, we went to the Chase Bank today to check it out because everything on Facebook is not always correct. But he said on his computer, it said like 6 or 8 mailmen in West Allis had been assaulted to get their keys to open up these mailboxes.
So I'll address that just because I've addressed the assault on mailmen. If there have been assaults on mailmen in West Allis, they have not been reported to the West Allis Police. In the past year, I know of one incident where a male person in West Allis had some mail robbed from them, or not robbed, sorry, that was the wrong term. stolen from them. Wrong legal term. But as far as an actual robbery or a forcible theft or assault of a male person, if that's occurring, they're not being reported to us. There are issues throughout Milwaukee County with some of the security of some of the blue collection boxes that you see out on the street, and that's one of the things that led to us putting our posting on there, because we're seeing some of that, and that's why we encourage people to go to their postal offices. And yes, there have been arrests in other parts of Milwaukee County of individuals who have stolen, had either assault or committed a robbery against a postal worker. But I am unaware of any of them being reported to us. But it is something that has occurred, and that is one of the things in other areas that has led us to kind of put that notice out there with checks specifically, because we want to make sure if you're mailing a check, the safest thing right now to do is if you have to mail a check, is actually go into the postal service, the postal office, and mail it. It's something that the postal inspectors are aware of, and they're working to investigate those cases as well. But I don't know of any postal workers being assaulted actually in the city of West Allis. That could it have happened and they just reported it to the U.S. Postal Inspectors? That is possible, but none of those things have been reported to the police department.
Is that a problem of West Allis or the federal, being it is a federal?
So it can be both, actually. The postal inspectors could go through the U.S. Attorney's Office to prosecute it as a federal crime. Probably more than likely, more often than not, it would be something they would choose to prosecute as a state crime and go through the local police agency.
Are there cameras on those boxes?
That I don't know. My guess is probably not. Most of them probably don't, but I don't know that for certain.
One of the things we don't control, unfortunately. So that's kind of.
We did have a problem over there by our post office there on Seventh was back in the
Continuous.
yeah. We had a hard time figuring it out, right?
Yeah, we did.
Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Did they gun store on 84th Street do anything to prevent another break-in that was there, or they got in?
I don't know specifically what they've done in their measures to try to, make sure that doesn't happen again, but I would think that it's in their best interest to try to deter anybody from breaking into their facility. Yeah. Jim?
The murder at 64th and Lincoln back in October.
Yes.
Last time I checked, there was an arrest, and I called West Allis PD to find out if anybody been charged. Has anybody been charged yet?
I'm not quite sure.
I think there's still investigation going on at that, yes. So I don't know that the charges have actually been
It's
filed.
a long time to wait.
There's got to be an investigation done so we make sure people get convicted.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
How many, crimes are committed by residents of, other cities in West Allis? Is that?
I don't know if we've ever actually figured out the ratio of, if our crimes are being committed specifically by our own residents. But the reality is I can tell you that when Flock came into existence, and for those who don't, it's basically a camera system that's constantly running the plates that go past it. And if they're stolen, if they're potentially, maybe that car is tied to a homicide in another jurisdiction, or they have somebody that's tied to that vehicle is wanted for something else. It's basically an alert system for us, for law enforcement. When that came live last year, we really saw in action how often vehicles that are stolen or people that are wanted for other crimes are rolling through the city of West Allis. So it basically opened, you always thought, but until you could see it and go, okay, the reality is it's a very mobile community. People are coming and going out of our city. It's not uncommon that it's individuals from other areas, just like ours, our free float into West Milwaukee or Milwaukee, so there's no specific number. I'm sure there's a way to try to grab that. But the reality is I'm not even quite sure. We can't lock we can't build a wall and say, all right, it's other people that are doing our crime. We can't let you in. So I don't know what that statistic would do for us initially. But there's a lot of people that move through the city of West Allis, and there's a lot of good people and a lot of bad people that roll through. And now, with, like I said, with having Flock here, you can see it because we'll be sitting, or we'll be doing something, and all of a sudden, oh, stolen car out of Milwaukee, stolen car out of Racine, or a car wanted in connection with a shooting up in Milwaukee. So it just depends. So.
How does that flock determine the automatic, is it
It gets plate. It's reading the plate. It reads the plate. It reads. You can narrow it down. Plate is easiest because the plate is sign of the vehicle. Then you can actually search it by the description of the car. I can search it by model. I can search it by color, make. It's grabbing as much data as it can as it takes its picture. So.
I don't know if this question is like pertaining to your department, but West Allis has an ordinance where you can't have a logo or graphics on your vehicle as you park on the road. So I'm just curious.
It has to do with the parking ordinance. It has to do with the parking ordinance and whether it's a commercial motor vehicle. And if it has I'd have to read it specifically, but typically if you have a company name, that's considered a commercial vehicle because it's advertising a company, and therefore it doesn't fit under the parameter of our ordinance. But I have to look at it specifically to remember. Usually it's on work vans, and work vans are usually larger in nature, and they're usually out of the size restriction for the ordinance too. So some of it has to do with weight, but usually it's considered a commercial motor vehicle, being the fact that it's used for a work purpose. All depends on how it's licensed too. Heavy truck, you might have a work van that you have licensed as a heavy truck. Well, now you can't have a vehicle that's licensed as a heavy truck get a permit. So it just depends on a few different angles of it. But you can look it up if you go through the city website and then you go into the municipal codes, you can look up the different vehicles. For overnight parking, it'll give you some information about what you can and can't get a permit for. But that has been a point of contention for a lot of people because I got a work truck. I have to bring it home. What do I do with it? We're always like, well, it's a work truck. It says Allied Pools on the side, or it says Joe's Plumbing. Well, you can't get a permit. But I would understand that part of the problem is then the statement is, well, I've got all my tools in it. I don't want to just park it in a parking lot. I don't want to. So what do you do with it? That's when you hopefully have a friend, or you clean up your garage and you pull it inside if it fits. It's a difficult. I feel bad for people, but the unfortunate thing, the ordinance is the way it sits, and unless you make modifications to it, we're stuck all living with the same ordinance. So, and the concern is when you start manipulating the ordinance, where does it stop? Then what you're going to change to do next time to make it accommodate this group? So it's sat for, that part of the ordinance is sat for like that for as far back as I can remember.
Is there a limit to the number of permits, like per address?
I don't think so. I don't think so because it does. Yeah. Yep, I don't believe the city says that you can have only X amount of permits, because what happens if you have a big family? You have 7 kids, 8 kids in your family, and you just happen to, you can't tell them no. But no, there is, not that I am aware of. All good? I'm off the hook? Trevor, want to close it? Thank you. I appreciate everybody coming. I appreciate all the questions. Like I said, if you ever have a question about patrol-related stuff, just give me a call. I'll do what I can for you. I try to explain what I can, be patient, because sometimes you're going to get the answer. I just can't fix that. So I do as much as I can to try to make everybody's life at least as livable as it can be, and try to help everybody understand why we do what we do to make it at least them understand. So thanks for coming, everybody.